What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you my 3 different decks that I have that I'm going to be looking to be taking to set championships over the next couple weeks. As you've seen in the thumbnail, I've got 3 different versions. I've got the meta one, the classic one, and then a kind of wild card off meta pick. Thank you guys for clicking on the video. I hope you guys do enjoy. Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It really does help with the channel growth and really helps this video and this channel get out to more Lorcana fans who might be looking for deck ideas to take to their set championships. All right, with that out of the way, let's get right into the meta pick deck that I have. And if you see any competitive Lorcana, you already know it's going to be Ruby Amethyst, just a staple of competitive Lorcana. This one is a little bit different. I have tweaked this slightly to deal with the mirror match, especially with a Ruby Amethyst deck winning the North American Championship. I definitely suspect that Ruby Amethyst is only going to get even more popular. It's already one of the most played deck colors at my local game shop, and I think it's only going to get even more popular. All right, starting off with the 1-drops, we are running 12 different 1-drops here. First up is going to be 4 copies of Diablo. Diablo, when this card is banished, you get to draw a card. Very useful for any type of early game removal. Really the go-to pick if you are playing against something like a Steel Song that's going to remove your 1-drop. You at least get the benefit of that card draw. We've got Chernobog's Followers. When you quest, you get to banish it and draw a card. This is your best 1-drop to get on the play because it's not going to be able to get removed in most cases, and you're going to get to quest with it and draw. Obviously, if the opponent's running Fire the Cannons and really wants to get rid of your 1-drop, they can. But typically on the play, this is going to be my go-to starter for this. But then we also have another 1-drop, and that's going to be the Olaf. He's just a 1/3, but most importantly is his 3 willpower. That allows him to survive any opening damage that your opponent might have. It survives a Let the Storm Rage On. In most cases, it will survive Strength of the Raging Fire, except if your Steel Song opponent or your Emerald Steel opponent played 3 1-drops. It'll survive that as well. It also survives Fire the Cannons, which, if you can keep this card on the board, it sets up a turn 2 Snake, which you'll see in just a second. So very useful for those specific matchups. In most cases, I am looking to play either a safe 1-drop into a Snake, or if I don't have a Snake in my hand and I don't have a Flynn in my hand, looking to get 3 1-drops onto the board, playing this very aggressive to get a lot of characters on board so that our opponent has to waste a lot of single target removal on these lowly 1-drop characters. Okay, so speaking of 2-drops, we've got only 2 copies of the Madam M Snake, so I don't really see this a lot in the opener, but if I do, I love comboing it with one of those safe 1-drop cards. We've got 3 copies of Flynn Rider. Flynn Rider is going to allow us to have a lot of early game aggression, getting that passive lore against the aggro decks because they don't really have a lot of strength to counter his ability. So we get his 3 lore at the start of our turn pretty much every single turn, as long as we have a strong turn 3 play. All right, and then the final 2-drop is actually my tech card for this deck. Like I said, purple's very popular. I think if you see that you're playing up against purple, the perfect turn 2-drop is going to be Maleficent Staff. Now, most decks are not running item removal. Sure, you can go up against Blurple that's going to have Hideaway to get rid of it, or they can even play Judy Hopps to get rid of this, or you can play against Amethyst Steel, which can also get rid of this pretty easily. But playing this into a Ruby Amethyst Mirror, there's almost no way to remove this from the board. And then we get free lore every time that our opponent wants to utilize one of their bounce characters, which in Ruby Amethyst, they're going to want to do a lot. Same thing with Emerald Amethyst. That does it for the 2-drops. Now we're going to look at pretty much the bulk of the deck here in the 3-drop category. We've got 2 copies of the Merlin Crab, allowing us to boost the attack power most likely of our low-cost characters to get some pretty good trades out. We've got the always useful 4 copies of Madam M Fox, giving ourselves a bit of bounce and a nice rush character to take something out in a surprise. 3 copies of the 1/1 evasive Sisu. That way we can get rid of like your 1-drop Daisy Ducks pretty easily without needing to challenge into it. Same thing with your Hiram, a perfect counter to that as well. 3 copies of the Inkable 3-drop Sisu. This one gets us even more strength for the amount of cards that our opponent has in their hand. So if you combo this with Flynn on turn 2, Sisu on turn 3, if your opponent has a lot of cards, you're going to be able to really rack in on that Flynn passive over and over again. For abilities, I am only running 2 copies of Brawl. You could definitely boost this up and get rid of either some of our later actions that you'll see. Brawl's awesome because it's inkable, and there are a lot of useful cards with 2 strength or less that you can get rid of. 4 copies of Friends on the Other Side, just a song that allows us to draw 2 cards, one of the best draw tools in Amethyst, and then another draw tool that's also going to get us some passive lore. You might have seen this picked up in some of the professional decks. It's going to be 4 copies of the library. Whenever a character is banished while they're here, we're going to get to draw a card. So when you combo this with things like Diablo, you're actually going to draw 2 cards when it's banished, which makes it a really great tool. And the fact that it has 8 willpower and gets you 1 lore every single turn, just a very, very important card, especially in character removal based opponents. Things like Ruby Sapphire and Ruby Amethyst don't have really great ways to take this out. Same thing against your song players, like your Steel Song players. Unless they have a lot of copies of Zeus or the running Rise of the Titans, it could be very hard for them to get rid of this card. So that does it for our 3s. Like I said, that's pretty much over half the deck now, just in the under 3 costs. But moving on, for 4s, we do have 4 copies of the brand new Genie. Genie's evasive. He's a 2/4, quest for 2. And when you play him, you get to draw a card. Really great to play him, get that card draw, quest him, and then you can bounce him on the next turn to try and keep him safe. And then also you can play him again to keep that cycle going of drawing cards. It wouldn't be an Amethyst deck without 4 copies of the Goat. The Goat is just a really great way to close out games without needing to quest characters. You get that free lore just from it entering and then exiting the play field, and 1 copy of Be King Undisputed. Running this just to hopefully get some of the ward characters off the field. If we can take care of all the other options that our opponent has and leave just a ward character on the board, it will get around that ward and they'll be forced to take it out, which can be really useful. Moving on to the 5 costs, I'm running 2 copies of the Elsa from Shimmering Skies. She has Rush and she's evasive, but when she enters play, she gets to exert a chosen opposing character, allowing you to put damage on something that they either just played or maybe they're trying to keep it safe. Just a very strong tool to come down on turn 5. And then another strong turn 5 tool is just Dragonfire. We can use this in a pinch to get rid of any character that doesn't have ward, and it doesn't have the restriction of Brawl, so we can take out some of those higher strength characters. It is uninkable and it's 5 costs, so in that way it's a little bit worse than Brawl and it comes out a little bit later, but it is one of my favorite cards to play with. Moving on to the 6 costs, and the reason we're running 1 of, 2 of with our actions, it's going to be the new Maui Half Shark. Maui, he's a big, strong, evasive body, but more importantly, when he attacks a character on the other side of the field, we actually get to pull an action from our discard back to our hand, allowing us to replay it. And he also has the passive ability of when you play action, you gain a lore. So really strong for action recursion, but also you get some passive benefits from him as well. Running 1 copy of Lady Tremaine. You can either run Lady Tremaine or Madame Medusa. I like Tremaine because she quests for 2. And she gets around the ward restriction if it's the only character on the field, just like Be King Undisputed. She does have the downside of having 3 strength, so she gets taken out by a Madame Medusa, but she's a really strong card, especially if you're able to bounce her and really take out a couple cards, maybe even get a quest off with her. And then we have our 3rd tech card here for all the control decks out there. It's going to be the Hades, Lord of the Dead. He quests for 3. He's a 3/4 body, so also susceptible to like your Madame Medusa or Ice Block plus Big Sisu. But he's got the amazing ability of during your opponent's turn, whenever one of my other characters gets banished, I gain 2 lore. So you drop this on turn 6 in preparation for a Be Prepared. And now if your opponent wants to take out all your characters, they're going to have to give you 2 lore for each one that you have on the field. So if you have 4 characters plus Hades, you're going to get 8 lore plus any of the extra benefits that those characters have from leaving the field, as long as they're not able to take out the Hades before they wipe your board. All right, and then of course we also have our way of wiping the board. That's going to be 2 copies of Be Prepared. We can go and get extras if we need it with the Maui Half Shark. And then since we run 6 Sisus in the deck, we're also going to be running 2 copies of the Big Sisu, Empowered Sibling. We can shift this out on turn 6 to get it out and surprise our opponents, or to really control an aggro matchup. She's a great card, 5/4, questing for 3, takes out anything with 2 strength or less that our opponent has on the field, while our characters actually to stay safe from it. So in certain situations, it's even better than Be Prepared. And that does it for our Ruby Amethyst meta deck, and with some added tech cards, some spice to hopefully deal with the meta that I've been playing against. All right, and next up we have what I like to call the classic, the bread and butter. It's going to be Amber Steel Song. Now this one does have a special theme, if you might call it. This is the Simba song variant of Steel Song. So as we go through, you'll see in our 1-drops we are running 3 copies of Simba Future King. That is for 2 reasons. The first reason is we run a lot of uninkables. I think I have 19 in this deck. So Simba's really good at filtering out the uninkables that we keep in our hand, especially in the early turns. But also we have a shift target for him later in the deck that allows him to sing 5-cost songs, and also has a really good passive ability. So the other 1-drops, we're running 3 copies of Daisy Duck. This is really just to put some pressure on those ramp decks. If we can get a Daisy Duck out early, we can get lore pretty quickly, and hopefully our control can shut down their ramp and buy Daisy Duck enough time to really get us close to winning the game. 4 copies of Robin Hood 1-drop. This is great if we need to get out a shift, just like Simba, out nice and early. And 4 copies of Cinderella, probably our most played 1-drop of the deck if we don't have a Daisy, because Cinderella is going to allow us to sing a 3-cost song on turn 2 if she stays on the field, countering things like Ruby Amethyst. If they have a 2 willpower or less 1-drop character, we can shut down a turn 2 snake, and she's great. She can take out like a Diablo before the Emerald Steel player is able to really ramp up and like get a Hidden Cove out. That does it for our 1-drops. We are running quite a lot. We're running 14, so we hope to hit at least 1, most likely 2 in our opening hand. Moving on to our 2-drops, definitely not as much as the 1s. We have 3 copies of the Ursula. She is a singer 4. If we can play her on turn 2, that means on turn 3 we can sing And Then Along Came Zeus, allowing us to take out potentially a high willpower character like a Daisy Duck on the other side of the field. And then if we want to put on some aggro pressure, we have 4 copies of Smee. Smee is great, although we are not running a captain in this deck, so he will take passive damage over time, which isn't the worst thing in the world. We just need to be cognizant of that. All right, now for the 3-cost, we have 1 copy of Lawrence. Lawrence is a 4/4. As long as he doesn't have damage on him, then he turns back into a 0/4, but he quests for 2. And with 4 willpower, he's a great target to heal with the Rapunzel and Amber. We've got 3 copies of Pete. Pete's going to shut down any late game actions or maybe any ramp actions that our opponent's doing. I'm running 4 copies of Gaston Baritone Bully, and this is for 2 reasons. 1, I've been burned too many times by the Ariel Singer card, just missing songs in my deck, even though I've got more than enough, almost a third of them in the deck. But also Gaston is a 3/3, so as long as we're not going up against a Sisu ice block, he can't be taken out by Brawl, and he most likely is going to get to sing at least once, which is really important for this deck. I talked about it earlier, but we have 4 copies of Let the Storm Rage On, 2 damage, we get to draw a card. Hopefully we get to play this nice and early thanks to Cinderella. And then also 4 copies of Strength of the Raging Fire. This card's great if we have a lot of 1-drops in our opening hand after the mulligan. We can load the board up with characters really quickly. On turn 2, we can have 3 characters, and we can pretty much take out everything except for your Daisy Ducks or the Nala that Amber has. Everything else should be able to be taken out by this card on turn 2. And if we have that Cinderella, even better. Now, with all those 4 willpower cards that we have, they are perfect targets for Rapunzel. Hopefully we can heal them for 3, get 3 cards, and then once she's on the board, she's a really fast quester. She's got 5 willpower herself, but the bread and butter draw engine for any Amber deck. All right, and then from Shimmering Skies, I run with 2 copies of Prince Naveen. Prince Naveen allows you to play a song 6 costs or less for free when you play Naveen from your hand. So you can play Prince Naveen on 4 and then also play like your Whole New World for free, your Grab Your Sword for free, Along Came Zeus. This is your real power spike for the early game, and the only danger with Naveen is because he's uninkable. If our early game songs get taken out of our hand with a Bare Necessities or with an Ursula Deceiver, he can feel a little bit useless coming down on 4. And that's why we're only running 2 copies of it. We're also running 2 copies of a new card. That's Pluto Guard Dog. Just like Lawrence, he has bonus strength as long as he doesn't have damage on him. So he's actually a 5/5 until he takes damage. And then he goes back to being a 1/5. But this Pluto also has Bodyguard. So he could be a good boy and he can protect our singers. I would say the only time I wouldn't want to see Pluto is if I'm going up against another steel player that can easily put damage on him. He might not be the best option because he's just going to be a 1/5 before he really gets to take something out with all his strength. And then 3 copies of And Then Along Came Zeus. I would run 4. I only have 3. So that just is how it goes. This is a great early game action with Vanessa, playing it for free with Naveen, getting to take something big out from the other side of the field, your Ruby Maui's, or maybe putting 5 damage on a location. This card definitely comes in handy. All right, now most of the rest of the deck is in the 5 cost slot. We've got the 2 copies of the new Simba Pride Protector. This is our shift for the early game Simba, and when he's exerted at the end of our turn, we actually have to ready all of our other characters, allowing us to keep our singers a little bit more safe. And then just to note, Simba and Bodyguard don't really play nice together, because if Simba is exerted, then the Bodyguard unexerts and doesn't protect anything anymore. So you just need to be aware of that when you're playing this card. Since we have the 1-drop Robin Hood, of course we're going to have the 5-drop Robin Hood as well. If he gets banished in a challenge, we get to draw a card. And also when he takes things out, we get that free 2 lore. And then our 5 cost actions are going to be Whole New World to refill our hand, and 1 copy of Grab Your Sword, just in case we need it to clean up a pretty aggressive board state. And then the last card in the deck is 1 copy of Cinderella Stouthearted. We love this card if we see it, but because it's 1 copy of it, don't count on seeing it in every single game. But even if you can't shift this out onto a small Cinderella, just a really strong card to have in the deck. And especially late game, if you can continually sing songs and then Cinderella can challenge into something that is ready, it's super powerful. All right, so that does it for our classic deck. I do need to take some cards out here just because we share colors with the off meta deck. All right, so this is probably the deck that I'm most excited about to really try out and bring to a set championships. I'm hoping I could really surprise a couple people and maybe make a top cut with it. But this is an idea I originally saw on TCG Player, and it's really using 2 colors that we haven't seen much, especially in the competitive side of things. It's going to be Amber and Sapphire. Now we're not using the ramp power of Sapphire. We're actually going to be using the secondary characteristic of Sapphire, and that's going to be Ward. So for this deck, we're going to start off. We've got 4 copies of Daisy Duck. I've already gone over Daisy, a great tool against ramp, especially if they're not using characters. Hopefully you can hit some big items or big actions to put to the bottom of your opponent's deck while getting that 2 lore every single turn. And then 4 copies of the 04 Nala. This is the promo version, so it shows up a little bit weird on camera. But Nala, although she is a 04, being able to survive any opening plays that our opponent has can be really strong, especially if she's able to turn the tides and take something out herself, which you'll see in a second. That's it for our 1-drops. We only have 8 of them. Now for our 2-drops, we are running with 4 copies of the Piglet. This is a card that I have been a little hit or miss on. It's great against pretty much anything that's not currently in the meta. So as long as it's not control, this is a great card. If it is control, this is something that I want to cut from the deck, which is a reason why I'm leaning on getting rid of this one. We've got 4 copies of the new Lilo card. That way, if we do end up versing control, especially single target control, they're going to spend a lot of their ink or their questing potential or their challenge potential on these Lilos, and hopefully we can just keep bringing them back turn after turn and really be a nuisance with them. All right, so we actually have this Sapphire Anna card. She is a 1/4, and when you have another hero character in play, she actually gets +1 lore. So she becomes a 1/4, an inkable 1/4, questing for 2. So she has the same stat line actually of the Daisy Duck that we love, without the downside of giving our opponents free cards every turn. And then of course, you're going to see a lot of heroes in this deck. Lilo's a hero, Piglet's a hero. Pretty much all of our 3-drops are going to be heroes as well to really activate her ability. Now looking at our 3-drops, we do have a lot of them, just like the Ruby Amethyst deck. One of my favorite 3-cost cards is the Alice. She has ward, so she can't be targeted by things like Brawl, things like Madame Medusa. And when she quests, she gives another character ward, so we can give ward to like our Daisy Duck starting on turn 4, and gives it an extra lore when it quests. So this could turn our Daisy Duck into a ward 1/4 questing for 3 every single turn, or the Anna that doesn't have the downside of Daisy. Another new card with also ward is going to be Zipper. Zipper's interesting because we don't have a lot of ways. Actually, we don't have any way to ramp multiple times on our turn in this deck, but we should still be inking every single turn. So with Zipper's ability, during our turn, whenever we ink, we can give a character resist 1 until the start of our next turn. Giving this to Daisy or Anna can help it survive something like a surprise Madame Mim rush, or make them commit 2 characters challenging into our 1 or 2 control, or make them commit challenging 2 characters to take out our 1 or 2 drop cards. Because if they leave any damage on these cards, of course we have the Rapunzel to heal it off of them. So a very strong card to really change the math. All right, and then I did also talk about having a use for that Nala, besides just being a quest for 1 body. And we're actually going to use a card way back from set 3. That's Wendy Darling. She also has ward. She's a 3/1, so she survives something like a Sisu. Can't be ice blocked down to 2 strength. Quest for 2, and more importantly, has support. So she can give her 3 strength to one of our other characters, allowing them to take out one of the exerted cards on the other side of the field. And as long as they don't have a rush card to take this out, she's going to survive for the next turn. And then no good aggro deck would be complete without an early game bodyguard to protect your strong questers. Donald Duck is awesome. He's 3 cost. He is 2/3, so he does get taken out by Brawl or by Sisu, but he also gives one of our other characters +1 lore to get us ever so closer to closing out the game before those late game threats happen. And then another great bodyguard that we have as an option on turn 3 is going to be Baloo. He's at 0/3, so same thing, can get easily taken out by the small Sisu, by Brawl. But if he is banished, we're going to gain 2 lore off of him, so he's pretty much a guaranteed gain 2, similar to how like Amethyst has pretty much a guaranteed gain 2 with the goat. And Baloo protects our early game cards, so pretty good. All right, so the other bulk of the deck is going to be in the 4 cost. I already talked about this earlier, but running 4 copies of the Rapunzel card. This is our draw engine. It is one of 2 draw engines that I've really been testing. The other one is the Robin Hood from Sapphire from set 1. It takes a long time to be able to play that card. Usually by that time we have a card disadvantage for our hand size, so you can at least draw 1 off of him, but Rapunzel's just way better, and especially when paired with things like Zipper, where we can hopefully have a situation where our characters are surviving with 3 damage on them. We can heal them up and get to draw an insane amount of cards with Rapunzel. If we ever need to protect any of our ward characters that have quested, we can actually use Sven. So Sven, he has a ready condition when you play him. That character can't quest or challenge, but they do get the ready up, which is really nice for protecting those ward characters. And he is a 3 strength character that quests for 2. Now this character, Scrooge McDuck, he is a 5/5 with a 4 cost. He is our way of dealing with those early game Flynns, because otherwise we don't have a strong strength character to really counteract his ability. Scrooge McDuck is going to allow us to, on turn 4, really limit the damage that those Flynns are going to cause. Since we have so many heroes in the deck, I also have 2 copies of Anna. If we can get a single quest out with Anna, with all the heroes that we have on the board, especially how low to the ground we play, you can really ramp up your lower total and really surprise an opponent to close out the game quickly. And then the last card, which is really, really important, especially against the Ruby Sapphire, Ruby Amethyst decks, is going to be McDuck Manor, a 9 willpower card that gets you 2 lore at the start of every single one of your turns. Playing this before a Be Prepared almost guarantees that you get maybe 2 or 3 uses out of this card, depending on how much ink the opponent has. And I think this card alone can definitely be the most impactful one in the deck. All right, and then last up, we got 2 more cards to talk about. First up is going to be the new Baymax. I can't wait to get my hands on the promo version that was at the championships. Hopefully they do have them at Worlds as well, but if not, I might pick up just 2 copies of him. So Baymax, whenever you play him, he has a similar ability to Rapunzel. You get to heal up to 2 damage from one of your characters. Instead of drawing cards though, you get to gain lore for how much damage you removed, and then he can do that every single turn whenever he quests. And then the last card in the deck is going to be Judy Hopps. Judy is a 6 cost character with support, so again, giving strength to our 1 and 2 drop characters. She has 6 willpower, so she can survive a lot of things from like your steel decks, and has the ability at the end of your turn, you can ready another one of your characters. So if you pair this with like your Alice, for example, Alice can quest give Judy ward, and then in return, Judy can ready Alice so that she can't be taken out by one of the challenging cards on the other side of the field or a rush character. Just a really strong combo that you can pull off, and it works with a lot of the cards in your deck, especially with all those ones with ward. So that does it for our off meta deck at the end there. All 3 decks covered that I'm going to be taking to some form of set championships over the next couple weeks. What kind of decks are you bringing to your set championships? I hope you guys liked the video. Hope you learned something. Let me know, is there another ink color that you would like to see? I think the biggest point of advice that I can give is it really depends on what your local meta is, what you should bring to set championships. I don't think there's any one given answer, but the most important thing is try to have fun, make sure you learn something from all your matches, and hopefully you can come home with a scar. My goal is definitely to get at least 1 or 2 and hopefully come home with a playmat as well. Thank you guys again, and I will catch you guys in the next one. If you want to see any of these decks on stream, be sure to tune into the channel, subscribe so you get that notification when I go live. I do play these on Pixelborn quite a bit, so come hop on in, check it out. If you want to support the channel even more, we do have a membership program that's live. You get some cool emotes, and also you get a cool member badge next to your name that changes the longer that you are subscribed to the channel. And then you can actually show off to everybody else in the live chat. Thanks again for watching and for your support. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.